Is there anything you're insecure about riding and showing us? Oh my god, yeah, all of it, like all of it. Hello, this is Riding with Ree. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. I haven't filmed a video at home in my house away from the yard in a really long time, and I have had a Q&A video that has been well overdue, so I thought this time I would film it at home. I have a bunch of questions in front of me on my laptop. Some are about Woody, some are about me and Woody, some are about just my opinion on certain things, so I'm hoping it'll be a good range of questions that you've asked. I always ask for Q&A questions on my Instagram, so if you don't follow me there, I would recommend it if you do want to throw any questions into the next Q&A. My handle is at Riding with Ree, so exactly the same as my YouTube. Or if you're not on Instagram, then you can leave your questions below in the comments. All right, let's jump straight in, shall we? Okay, so the first question is, what was Woody's advert? I really liked this question because actually, despite the fact that I was scrolling HorseQuest every day of every hour and looking on Facebook, and I had, notifications set up for the dealers that I liked on Facebook, I actually ended up finding Woody through a friend, which I hear quite often from people actually, is the horse they find is often through somebody else. So I was going home for a few days to Gloucestershire, where I'm from, to visit my parents, and I mentioned to some friends, and I put a status on my personal Facebook and said, I'm still looking, this is what I'm looking for, does anybody know of anything? And my friend sent me videos of Woody and said, oh, my friend Steve has this horse in, you should go and check him out. So this was the advert that was on Steve's Facebook when he was advertising Woody. This very cool little horse wants a new stable to live in. 16-1 gelding, 9 years old, so 9 this year. Very easy, lovely to have around. Grassroots stream, mother-daughter share, event, hunt, dressage, he'd do anything. Message me. So what drew me to this was firstly those basic facts of the height. The 16-1 was exactly the height I wanted really. 16-1, 16-2 was ideal. The fact that he was 9 this year, an 8-year-old, was bang in the middle of what I was looking for. I was looking from 6-year-olds to 10-year-olds, and my coach actually said to me, an 8-year-old would be perfect. So to have one that was turning 9 was pretty amazing. And then just the way that he described him, grassroots dream. I've mentioned before that I would love to do competing on Woody and a bit of eventing, but I'm never going to be like going up the levels. It's always going to be a kind of grassroots level. And what we mean by that is like the base introductory level of the sport. So in British eventing, that would be BE 80 centimeters, the height of the fences, or BE 90, and that's what I hope to do with Woody. So that was a big tick for me. And then he also describes him as a good mother-daughter share. Obviously these are all kind of general terms, but mother-daughter share generally means that the horse is suitable for a mum to ride and for a daughter to ride, which usually means they have a really nice temperament and they can be ridden by a variety of rider. And that was really nice to me because although I'm not a novice, I'm also not like super duper experienced, and I've been out of proper riding for a little while, so I wanted something that could kind of manage that. And then he said event, hunt, dressage, he'd do anything. And that was the final push for me because of course I want to do a bit of everything on Woody, and I have. And so these things really kind of ticked my boxes. And looking at the pictures here that were on the advert, he looks really smart, he looks lovely on the flat, he looks lovely over a fence. So then I reached out to Steve, got the videos, and the rest was history. Sorry, my doorbell rang, had to run off. I'm back now. Anyway, that was Woody's advert. I had a lot of questions about the buying process, and I actually have a Q&A that was all about buying Woody and all of that. So I'll link that above if you want to watch that. It's also in the description, but I'm going to kind of move on from the general buying questions because there was lots and I've already covered a lot of them. So the next question, how do you know when you're ready to compete/event? I think this one comes down to a little bit of a gut check. I think it comes down to gut check and planning and preparation. So I would say that if you've set yourself a goal of in 3 months' time, you want to do your first event on your horse, and then you work up to that event with small things. So say you've wanted to do a 1-day event, you do some dressage competitions, some cross-country training, some clinics, some combined training where you do dressage and show jumping. You build your confidence over fillers, you build your fitness, and then you get to that point and you have a little bit of butterflies. I would say that the butterflies are good and that actually you probably are ready to compete. But a lot of it is a gut thing. I had the chance in a few weeks' time to go in someone's lorry and go to our first away from home dressage competitions with Woody. And I also had 2 other tests to learn that week for a test at home. And I just found myself getting really nervous. And I said to my coach, you know, I'm feeling really nervous about this. I don't know whether it's the right thing. I don't know whether it's too early. I'm worried that it will go wrong and then we'll ruin our confidence. And she said to me, well, would you be as nervous if you didn't have 2 other tests to learn? And I said, yeah, I think I would. And she said, okay, if you didn't have the opportunity to go in someone's lorry, would you still go? Would you seek out this competition on your own and go to it? And I was like, no. And she was like, well, maybe it is a little bit early. She was like, you know, it's different if it was your dream to do a dressage competition and you'd had put this in your date in the diary as like a goal. She was like, then I'd say that you should go and you should push yourself. But she was like, but this one's sort of come up a bit randomly and maybe it's not the right time. So I think it's sort of a gut check and you just have to be honest with yourself. Some people would say just get on with it and go, and like that's also fine. But I think for me, because Woody and I are so new to each other, I want to make sure that every time we go and do something, our confidence levels come back sky high. I've spoken before about the analogy of the penny in the jar, that every time you ride, you put a penny in the jar. Every time something goes wrong, you take pennies out of the jar. And the point is that you constantly build up this jar of pennies. So that's what I'm trying to do. So I would say, go with your gut. What is your favourite thing about Woody so far? Oh, his personality. You've probably seen it on the videos, but he is just he's very playful. He loves human company. He's obviously had a very nice life and he really loves being around humans. He loves attention. He loves cuddles, and I love that. But he also tries really hard. You know, he tries really hard when we're riding, when we're out and about. And he's not like the bravest horse out there, but he really tries to listen and he really tries to be brave when you ask him. Like if he backs off something and you say, no, actually, I want you to go forward. He's like, okay, I'll do it. You know, he's just a lovely, lovely natured horse. He's just, someone's done very well with him in the past. How did I know that I was ready for a horse? Well, I mean, I have been thinking about this for well over a year before I started looking for a horse. And, you know, I planned a budget planner. You might have seen that video from last year where I pulled together a bunch of different costs from different livery yards in the area. And I was thinking about what kind of livery would work for me, whether I could do it with my job. I was thinking about the time, the money. I was thinking about what happens if we move away, what happens if we have a baby one day, like what does that mean? And I was thinking about the horse care and the support. And I think it's just a case of like getting all of your ducks in a row from that point of view. Oh, such a corporate term, isn't it? But you know what I mean? Knowing that you've got the finances to back it up, not just now, but in 10 years time, in 20 years time, especially if you're buying like a, you know, an 8-year-old or a 5-year-old, they're going to live all of that time. Contingency plans for if your life changes, life gets in the way. And then really, I think sitting down with yourself and asking whether it's actually a horse that you want for yourself. Because for a lot of people, actually sharing and loaning or riding lessons is enough. It's what they want. It fills that kind of need that they have to be around horses, but they don't need a horse of their own. So I think it's perfectly fine to sit down and have a really honest chat with yourself and say, actually, is it what I want? But if it is, I think it's knowing that. It's making sure that you have the support around you, especially if you're more of a novice rider, that your horse care is up to scratch, that you have somewhere for the horse to live, that you can back it up with finances, that you have the time, all the usual stuff. What is your weekly riding schedule? So I actually did a whole video on my week's riding, which I'll put up here and in the description for you recently, but in essence, I ride 6 days a week. Woody has 1 or 2 days off a week, depending on how busy I am and how tired he is, what we have going on. And then I try to alternate between schooling and hacking so that I'm never in the school like 2 days in a row. If I am in the school 2 days in a row, I try to do different things. So if I do flat work one day, I'll jump the next. If I jump one day, then I might lunge the next, or long range, so that everything is different and Woody is thinking about different things all the time. And that works really well for him. He really likes to have stuff to engage his brain with. He gets bored easily, so I try and do it that way essentially. Did you name Woody, or was that the name he already had? Yes, that was the name he already had. I didn't name him. Although Woody's old owner, who had him from when he was like a baby all the way up to 5 years old, got in touch with me recently, and she watches my channel and she kind of supports and we chat quite regularly, and it's really nice. But when she owned him, he was actually called Moo. That was his name. So I didn't name him Woody. He was named Woody from the owner before me, but it's interesting to just go back even further and find out the names he had before. But yeah, I wouldn't change it, whether he was Moo, whether he was Woody. For me, like, that's his name. but yes, that is his stable name. And then of course he does have a show name, which lots of people have been asking me. I think for now I'm going to keep it to myself, just because he doesn't have a competition, like a BE record yet, and it's something we'll do together. And I just know that people will go and look it up, and I really want that first time to be like sacred. That sounds so weird, but kind of precious between us two, and something that we keep to ourselves until I'm ready to like share how we do. But anyway, we'll see. Maybe one day we'll tell you what it is. Do you keep Woody stalled, or does he get turnout? So stalled is an American term for stabled. Yes, Woody is turned out every single day. So he at the moment is in at night, and then he goes out in the day. And then in the summer, I'm gonna see, we do have the option of 24/7 turnout at our yard. The only thing that worries me slightly is because he's got a lot of pink skin, and because we've been working really hard to put condition and weight on him, I just don't know whether he will cope with being outside 24/7 in the summer, or whether his coat might find it difficult, or whether we want to bring him in a bit. So we'll see. But yes, he goes out every single day, and that's really important to me, that he gets the turnout he deserves. And you know, if we're out, like when we went to the fun ride, he didn't get a chance to go out that day because we were out for most of the day. So I gave him the next day off so he could have the whole day out in the field. I think that's important, that you find a balance between what you want them to do and what they do as horses, basically. What has been the most difficult aspect of owning that you didn't expect? I think actually it's been the responsibility, and this is where I think full livery works for me for a number of reasons around my job and everything. But I think the other thing that it does is gives me this safety net of just having someone to ask. Even though I've ridden since I was 11 and I've been around horses so many years, I still get this like shoots of anxiety around like picking the right rug, or like, are my boots too tight, or oh, he's cut himself, is it okay? And having somebody else who you can ask on the yard, I think it's the responsibility that this horse is completely your responsibility, and you are responsible for their happiness and their care and their well-being. That's been the piece that has like got me the most. I think everything else has been like expected and planned for, but you can't plan for that feeling that like this whole animal relies on you entirely now, which is amazing. And I feel very lucky. I'm a very, very supportive yard who is very, very good at like helping me out. But that's been the main thing that really kind of shocked me when I first owned a horse. What was the most stressful thing about getting Woody to his current yard, and does he have a BFF yet? Yes, so you might have got a sense of it, and there were actually a couple of videos that I didn't add into my when I bought Woody and I did that vlog on like my first horse and introducing him. There were some videos I didn't put in, but there was one where my anxiety that week was so high because I just kept waiting for something to go wrong. I kept thinking maybe they would change their minds and they wouldn't want to sell him anymore, or he would fail the vetting, or something would go wrong on the day that I wanted to bring him home. And I think it was just that anxiety. I was just so worried that something meant that he wasn't going to be mine. And I found it really, really difficult to kind of toy between these two emotions of being ecstatic and over the moon about finally having my first horse, and then telling myself not to get too excited. And that was really, really hard. And you can see it on my intro video, that moment he arrives and I lead him out of the lorry. It's on every single intro to my videos now. But the like look on my face because he's home and it's done. I've bought him, I've got the sale, like it's finished. And I think that was just a moment of relief, but that was stressful. And in terms of BFFs, yes, he goes out with two horses called Zach and Lyric. Lyric is a horse who was the grey horse you would have seen on my fun ride. He was owned by my friend Lynn, and they are like a proper little boy band out there. They're just very cute, and they go out together. And actually the other morning, Lyric and Woody were being turned out. Sorry, Lyric and Zach were being turned out, and I had Woody on the yard, and I tried to bring him back into the barn to groom him, and he was like, what? They're going out and I'm not going out, like what's going on? And it's very cute. They get on very well, which makes me very happy that he's surrounded by friends. And he lives next to this mare called Coco, and when she gets brought in from the field, he like whinnies at her, and I'm like so I think he's happy. What's been your favorite bit about vlogging your journey? Oh, I think it's definitely looking back and having a kind of, well, there's a few things actually. One is having a sort of a load of memories to look back on. Just on my Instagram today, I was looking back at where we first were when we started jumping together and how that's improved over the last few months, and seeing how my riding has improved, and having that log of content just to look back on has been pretty amazing. But I think beyond that, it is the conversations I get to have, I try really hard, especially on my Instagram, to kind of open conversations and have debates about various things: turnout, bridals, stress, mental health, all these things. And people will always share their opinions, and we don't always agree, but I always have debates, and I just find that very exhilarating. I don't know, I really like learning and knowledge. I'm a bit of a geek in general, and I love to learn from other people and chat with other people and hear other people's experience and stories, and that's the bit that I love. And I hope that in the future I will be able to do more of the storytelling of other people's stories on my channel as it grows, because I just love it. When I first started in my career from uni, I actually wanted to go into features editorial, which is like, if you imagine the middle of the Vogue magazine where they had those big interviews that were like 4 pages long with one person, that's what I wanted to do. That's the job I wanted. And although I ended up going into social media and marketing and other things, it's stuck with me, this idea of like telling someone's story. I'm just fascinated by it. So that's the bit that I love the most. Any plans to take Woody cross country? Yes, absolutely. But for me, cross country requires a lot of trust together. I want to feel my most confident when we go out. So I just want to make sure that we have the control that we need when we're show jumping, and that we're super happy with our jumping in the arena before we go out to an open space. But 100% we are going to be going XC. What is the yard you keep Woody at like? So I did actually do a yard tour not that long ago of my yard, but I ended up leaving out a few bits. It was a bit stupid really. I just didn't think. So if you want me to do an updated yard tour, let me know in the comments, because I'm so happy to do it, and the yard is lovely and they are so happy for me to show you around. So I absolutely love it. It is such a supportive environment. The horses are so well looked after. The team is amazing. The facilities are incredible. Like we are very spoiled, and it is perfect for what I need. Favorite rug brand? Premier Equine, probably. I have a Premier Equine turnout stable rug, a couple of different Premier Equines, and I really like those. They're really hard wearing. They look very chic. They're just very good, like high quality. The fastenings are great. They have a lot of flexibility. You can take the necks on and off. You can add layers, take layers away. And I think that's really good when it comes to horses. You want stuff that lasts a long time and that you can use for more than one thing. So I love Premier Equine. They also recently created a sort of loyalty scheme. So the more you spend with them, the more of a discount you get. And I think that's a really great way to engage with your customers. So I'm a big fan of them. What do you do outside of riding for work? Are they flexible with your schedule? So I work in marketing, and obviously we've all worked from home for the past year. So I don't have a standard 9 to 5. So I'm able to ride first thing in the morning. I'm happy to do an updated routine if you guys want. And actually I have been thinking a lot about how the pandemic has altered the way that we work, and I kind of want to do a video essay on it or talk about it a bit more, but I haven't figured out how yet, so stay tuned. That's going to happen at some point. How do you find combining owning a horse and life outside the barn? Yeah, this is a really good question. So I spend a lot of my time at the yard, but there is a freedom that comes with full livery, and I understand that that's not something that is available to everyone. And you know, my career is the reason I need full livery, but it's also the reason I can have full livery. So it's kind of, you know, it weighs itself up. But there is a freedom that comes with that, knowing that no matter what happens with you, what you get caught up in, your horse has the same routine. And there is a freedom that means I can still go for brunch with my friends. I can, you know, ride in the morning and then go to the gym in the evening because I know someone else is going to get Woody in, etc. So I do spend a lot of time riding, actually. You know, it's my passion at the end of the day. It's where I want to spend a lot of my time, but I do find a balance with it all. And I think a lot of that comes down to planning. I plan all of my rides in my equestrian planner. I plan when I'm going to ride, and I plan my calendar days with friends and stuff well in advance to make sure that it all lines up and Woody gets the time off that he needs as well. So I think I have a pretty good balance, but I do put a lot of my time, energy, passion into horses because I love it. That's that. What was the first thing you bought Woody after you viewed him? Oh, this is really boring, but the first thing I actually bought was travel boots, and I bought them before I even bought Woody because I didn't have any, and I just knew that when I found the right horse, it was all going to move quite quickly and I wasn't going to have any way to bring them home safely. So I bought these travel boots that you might have seen, the Premier Equine ones off Facebook Marketplace, and I nearly didn't put them in my car when I drove home before I knew about Woody, because I didn't want to jinx it, which was so stupid. But anyway, I threw them in the back of my car, and then of course a few days later I found Woody. So after your fall off Woody, were you scared to get back on? So yes, this is referring to the fun ride video I put up a couple of weeks ago where Woody fell over and I fell off. Usually after a fall I would say yes, but because this one was, one, partly my fault because I shouldn't have pushed him on, we talk about it in the video, it's a whole thing, but because he just fell over, he didn't do anything, it wasn't a behaviour that he exhibited that meant he was, you know, being naughty or whatever. I didn't feel nervous getting back on because actually it was just a freak accident. He just fell over. I think if he'd have done something like bombed off or bucked me off or something like that, I would have felt differently and been a bit more nervous. And that's not to say that when I get back on him now, I'm like, when I canter in open spaces, I'm like, oh gosh, please don't trip over or please don't spook. I still feel those things, but they're not, it's not like an acute fear. So it's a good thing, I guess. Is there anything you're insecure about riding and showing us? Oh my God, yeah, all of it, like all of it. It's always scary to put yourself out on the internet, isn't it? I mean, you know, I'm very lucky. I feel like I have a very lovely community who are very kind, but the equestrian world in general does not have a good reputation on social media for being nice. And I like to think that I've set up my community pages to be a space where I'm vulnerable and I'm honest about my own level and ability. And I'm open to feedback and debate and knowledge growth. But I think I try to set it up so that people come at it, including myself, from an empathetic point of view. And I think that's generally speaking the response that I've got. But yeah, I think at the moment I'm probably most insecure about my leg position because I've been doing a lot of work to stop putting so much weight on the outside of my foot and to stop my feet sticking out when I jump and stuff, and swinging. My lower leg can swing a little bit, so I think that's something I'm very conscious of. But you were all really nice, so. But yeah, every time I put something up, you kind of hold your breath a bit. But then if I were to let that anxiety take over, then I'd never post anything. So I just kind of hope that I can give the right context around the fact that I'm still growing, I'm still learning, I'm open to feedback, and hope that that makes people nice. Remind us that there's a human behind it all. Yeah. If there's one thing you wish you knew about before buying a horse, what was it? I think that people will only give you information if you ask the right questions and find someone who knows what they're doing. I was so lucky to have an amazing coach who dug and dug and dug and often found information that I didn't. By asking the right questions, and there would have been horses I potentially would have bought had I not had her there, and they wouldn't have been right for me. So I think one is take your time, really take your time. I mean, it's hard to say this knowing that I've already got one, but try and be as patient as you can and find someone who knows what they're doing, really knows what they're doing, and can watch a video and pick stuff out, because they are the ones who are going to ask those questions and probe and probe and probe and find the right answers for you. Any gym exercises you recommend to help with riding? Yeah, so I'm just getting back into the gym actually, and I can do a gym routine video if you want it. I'm still getting back into mine because I've only just started going back to the gym after lockdown and everything. But at the moment I try to do a balance of cardio at the gym to help my fitness when I'm riding, my stamina, leg day, so squats, the adductor, which usually is kind of a useless exercise, but actually for horse riding it's really good because it's the inside of your thigh and that sort of strength. Anything to do with core, I'm always thinking about my core whenever I'm doing any leg exercises. And then I do throw in a bit of upper body just for balance. I do try and do a bit at the moment with the Bosu ball, which is kind of like half a gym ball with a flat base. I'll put a picture up if I can. And I do squats on that and single leg, kind of anything single leg for balance. So essentially stamina, core, balance and leg muscles is the things that I focus on the most. How did you get back into riding as an adult? Oh, so this is quite an embarrassing story, okay, but so I never sort of stopped. I would ride when I went home. I would ride on my friends' horses, hunters usually, but it wasn't very often. And then a couple of years ago, my partner and I went over to New Zealand and we rode horses out there. And it was just like, it kind of reignited something in me. And when we got back, this is the embarrassing bit, I found myself downloading this horse game called, I can't can't remember what it's called, I'll find it. It was this like racing game where you like breed horses and then you race them, and I got like quite into it. Like we were at home and we were still on holiday, so we weren't doing anything, and I just got really into this game. And there was a point where I was like, Rhiannon, like, you're 27 years old, like enough is enough, or 26 or whatever I was at the time. And I was like, I think I need to start riding again. And then I started looking into it, and the rest is history. How many times a week do you ride / see Woody? I usually ride 5 or 6 times a week, and I see Woody every day if I can. There's rarely a day that I don't go up at least once, sometimes twice. I do try, when it's his day off, I go up and give him a big full groom so that he still feels the love. And, you know, I think it's important that we show them appreciation even when we're not riding them. But I'm also quite aware of his routine. So if it gets to like 7 p.m. and I'm still working, I try not to go up there too late, because I kind of don't want to ruin his evening, which sounds really silly, but you know, when they've been fed and they're just quiet in their stables, I kind of feel like we should let them be. So I'm a bit weird about that, but I try and give him his space as well. But yeah, every day. This question is one of my favorite questions that I've had ever. Okay. How do you handle your period when riding? This was such a good question. So I know that Olivia Towers Dressage was speaking about being on your period and riding, and I just thought it was a really, really good question. So for me, I'm really lucky that I don't get like major cramps or anything, and I get a little bit of a bad back. So to be honest, my riding routine doesn't change that much because I don't really notice it when I'm riding. But what I do find myself having to do is, because my emotions are like at the surface, and like most of us, when I'm around that time of the month, I can be like more emotional, I can get upset easier, I can get angry easier. I find that it's my emotional side that I have to kind of temper, and I have to make sure that I'm not being too hard on myself, that I'm not getting too sad about my ability, that I'm not getting frustrated either with me or with Woody. And I don't mean like as frustrated as like rah, and like hitting in things, but not that far. But even little frustrations, you know, when he's just not quite going right, and instead of just working through it, just being like, oh, why isn't this working, you know? So I think it's those things. I also listened to a really fantastic podcast a few years ago by James Smith, PT, where he basically analyzes the hormonal changes of women over the course of a month. And in these hormonal changes, he's not the only PT talking about this, but there are times when you will be stronger and less strong and better at stamina and craving sugar more in your month than others. So I can't remember all the details, so I'll link the podcast below, but he essentially says, you know, there is a time when you should be doing more of your weight training in a month, and there's a time when you should be doing more of your running, and there's a time when you'll find it much easier to be on your like diet, like clean eating, and a time when you're going to need more sugar and carbs. And I do think about my gym routine, and I remind myself of these changes, and I'm like, why is this so much harder than last week? And then I kind of catch myself and I'm like, this is why. So I think it's a really good question. I think women who ride horses are athletes, and I think it's important that we approach our bodies and the hormonal changes that happen like any other athlete would. So loved this question. What was the hardest thing for Woody settling in a new yard? He actually settled really quickly. He was very chilled when he arrived. If anything, I wondered whether he was kind of internally a little bit stressed, because he was quite quiet, and then I realised that he is just a relatively quiet horse. But I think the hardest thing was not being able to tell him that, like, this is your home and you're safe and you're so loved, which sounds silly, but like I think that was tough for me. I really struggled with, I drove back to London before he came back, and I had HFS Horse Transport Company pick him up, and I wasn't there when he was picked up. I was going to meet them at the other end. But I really struggled with that, because I really wanted to like tell him that like he was going to be safe and it was fine, which is, I know it sounds silly, but I was so worried about him, and it made me really upset to think that he might jump on this lorry and be like, where am I going? So I think it was more just like that period of time where he doesn't know where he is, he doesn't know who I am, he doesn't know what's going on. And I can only thank my yard and the team that work there for making it such a tranquil, safe space that he settled in really quickly. What would you tell 22-year-old Rhi if you could? Care less. Care less about everything. I'm just a worrier, and I always have been, I think. I think care less about what people think, care less about your career, not care less about your career, but care less about where it's going, care less about how you look. I had an old mentor who sat down with me once, and she was like, I told her what I was struggling with, and she said, you know, I think you just need to give less. And there's this book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a. And she was like, I think you need to do that. You need to read that. And I think your early 20s is such a crazy, tumultuous period. And a friend of mine who was in her 30s said to me the other day, actually not the other day, a while ago, they were like, you know, your 30s are so much better than your 20s because you don't care anymore. You know who you are. You've got your life established. You've got your friends. You know where you live. You're sorted, and you care less, and you have more money. It's so much more fun. And I was like, that's not true. Everyone says your 20s are the best. But as I'm 28 this year, and as I get closer to 30, I'm like, oh, I think they're right. Like, you start to care less, and you start to be more comfortable with who you are. And there's a liberation in that. And there's also a confidence that comes with knowing that so much of what people think of you, one, it comes from perception, and two, people care way less about you than you think because they're so busy thinking about themselves. And if you take just a very basic analogy of like what you wear, anyone can wear anything. It's about the confidence that comes with wearing it. And I think the more comfortable you get with yourself, the easier it is to just go through life. And then you realise how much energy you spend caring about other things and what other people think and whether or not what you're doing is cool or interesting. And as soon as you start sort of not caring about that stuff, you're liberated to be yourself completely, and you can spend that energy on things that you care about. That feels like a good place to end. This was a bit of a random Q&A, but I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm hoping I'll be back with some interesting content in the next few weeks. I'm hoping to take you down to the bluebell bloom near the yard and lots of other fun things. So make sure that you're subscribed. Leave me any questions or comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye.